India wants to cut its fast-growing population, so it offers programs aimed at persuading Indians to be sterilised. Bribes and prizes are offered, but why are they mainly aimed at only women and not men? It's a policy described as sexist and unfair, since women bear all the responsibility for family planning. Will India's all-or-nothing policy achieve the required results? And what are the consequences? This is Inside Story. Hello and welcome to Inside Story. I'm Stephen Cole. Faced with a population over 1 billion people, local and national officials in India are introducing some extraordinary measures to try and cut back on birth rates. For example, in impoverished Rajasthan state, authorities are offering villagers the chance to win cars, motorbikes and even fridges if they volunteer to undergo sterilisation. The state government has decided that 1% of its population of almost 60 million has to be sterilised every year. Well, the programme is aimed at women, and thousands have already been tempted by those lucrative incentives. But others are suspicious and ask why men aren't being targeted too. From the western Indian state of Rajasthan, here's Prerna Suri.
Here's how one Indian state is trying to slow down population growth. It's giving this woman a car in exchange for being sterilised. Sunita Devi had the operation, was entered in the draw, and was lucky enough to have her name picked.
I already have 2 children, and it's quite expensive to raise them. My husband doesn't earn much, so we decided to go through with this procedure.
Rajasthan is one of India's most populous states, with over 68 million people living here. One of the reasons for the high birth rate is that girls are traditionally married off young, and the average woman here has more than 2 children. Most of the people that you see here live in villages, and they still struggle with illiteracy and a lack of awareness. Many of them haven't heard of any contraceptives, and a lot of them can't even afford to buy them. So in the absence of any family planning programs, local governments here say that sterilizations are the only way forward. The Rajasthan state government says 1% of its population has to be sterilized every year. In the race to meet that target, health officials like these volunteers urge people, mostly women, to be sterilised. They do that by offering them freebies like blenders, mobile phones and even food processors. So in government-run hospitals like these, many women who've already had children come to have their operations done, and health officials are quick to defend why they're offering incentives.
India is going through a massive population explosion. And by sterilising people, we are trying to encourage them to have only 2 children. The more people a country has, the less prosperous it becomes.
India doesn't have a strict family planning program like China's one-child policy. But sterilisation is still seen with suspicion here. In the 1970s, the government introduced a forced sterilisation program that led to thousands of operations on childless couples. The mistrust that drive created still runs high, and some people say giving away free stuff to control the birth rate is the wrong approach.
Sterilisation is not going to stop that momentum. What is going to stop that momentum is if you keep girls in school for longer, if you delay the age at which they get married, and if you delay the age at the first conception, and if you start spacing childbirths.
There's no doubt that one of India's biggest challenges is controlling population growth. But a birth control program driven by giveaways has a lot of people debating other better options. Prerna Suri, Al Jazeera, PALI district in Rajasthan.
But it's China, not India, which is the most populous country in the world with 1.3 billion people. Unlike India, China adopts a one-child per family program. It's reduced population growth in the country by 300 million people in 20 years. The policy was established by the Chinese leader Deng Xiaoping in 1979. It has been restricted to China's ethnic Han majority living in urban areas. According to this policy, couples were allowed to have 1 child. Couples faced heavy fines for having any extra children. And workers in this program have broad powers to order abortions and sterilizations. But critics of the policy note its negative social consequences, particularly sex discrimination, with boys being viewed more culturally preferable than girls in these societies. Well, joining us now are our guests in New Delhi, Poonam Mutreja, and Poonam is the Executive Director of the Population Foundation of India. In London, we have Simon Ross, who is the CEO of Population Matters, a charity that campaigns on issues of global population sustainability. And via Skype from PALI in Rajasthan state, we have NEERAJ PAVAN. Mr. PAVAN is the PALI district collector, or the head of district administration there, and the man behind the Sterilisation Incentives Programme. A warm welcome to all three of you. Now,
thank you.
We've started talking about two very patriarchal societies, China and India, with very different approaches to cutting or managing their vast populations. Poonam Mutreja, 34 new heads arrive in India every minute. It's not surprising, is it, that some regional governments offer incentives aimed at some kind of population control. Is there anything wrong in Rajasthan offering prizes for birth control?
Everything is wrong, according to me, with doing that. First of all, I don't know if Mr. Pradhan realizes this is against India's population policy of 2002. It does not support or allow for incentives or disincentives. Secondly, fertility is declining across India because people want lower number of children. The wanted fertility in India is 2.3 at this point of time. And if you provide good quality contraception and services, people will come to ask for contraception. And why is it that we only focus on a permanent method? Why don't women in India, especially in Rajasthan, get the opportunity to space their children, to postpone their children? Lastly, why does Rajasthan government not focus on keeping girls in school instead of allowing them to get married at an illegal age? More than 50% of the girls in Rajasthan get married below the age 18, some below the age 15. You're taking away any opportunity, capability, and you're putting them at risk of maternal mortality, maternal morbidity, as well as the child. So instead of dealing with those issues, why don't you work on increasing age at marriage, keeping girls in school and...
That's a series of questions there, Poonam, and I'll ask NEERAJ to answer them in a moment. But first, before that, I want to go to Simon Ross. It's estimated that in 13 years' time, India will have a greater population than China's. So you do need, don't you, extreme measures when the planet is facing those kinds of figures, don't you?
I think it's really important that we work to bring down the population growth rate. We're hearing that climate change is a real problem and we're not managing to stop the emissions. And there's also an issue of biodiversity and water resources, particularly in India, both in terms of the groundwater and in terms of the irrigation from the glaciers, which are shrinking. So this issue of too many people is a really important one, and I think we should actively try and bring down the growth rate.
So it's okay to give a fridge to somebody if they want to be sterilised, is it?
I think there's a role for sterilisation for sure if people have had enough children, and there's also a role for measures to try and encourage people to have to take on contraception and other measures. But it has to be, we have to make sure that people believe it's in their own interests. It shouldn't be forced and they should be given options.
NEERAJ PAVAN in Rajasthan.
Yeah.
You came up with this idea. I wonder whether it's dangerous to incentivise sterilisation.
No, let me complete. Let me start with the basic notion that India is fast. The population growth is too fast in India, and we have to come out with some kind of measures which are special in nature. One. Number two, incentivizing is not cajoling or not persuading some person to do something beyond his will. All what we are doing is just to give some kind of boost to all those people who are willingly coming forward to adopt this small family norm. We are not cajoling anybody. We are not persuading anybody. All what we are doing is just the thing that all those
well, you
people,
are really
all those
persuading
couples,
somebody, aren't you? If you're very poor, and if you're certainly in a couple, then the husband, and this is probably going to be the husband, he's going to say, listen, we could win a car or a fridge or a mobile phone if we, talking to his wife, if you're sterilised. So that is in a way persuasion, isn't it?
Yeah, it is a kind of persuasion. I can accept it. But one more thing, it is not centric only to females. Last year, we did many male sterilisation also.
But that's only 1%, isn't it, male sterilisation in India?
Because otherwise it was not available. If we are not incentivizing, and we are giving mobiles not to females, we are giving mobiles to only males who are getting themselves sterilized, and this is the fruit which is waiting for those people. We have set up a fruit that if you'll adopt the small family norm, you will be getting this fruit. And this is not something which is beyond the population policy which we have in India.
Well, it is. It's contrary to India's. It's contrary, isn't it?
No, it is against the population policy. It's absolutely against the population policy. This is a Rajasthan-centric policy, not a policy. I would say it's only at the district level. And of course, you're giving not just incentives. You are indirectly forcing many people to take action and do things for sterilization. And men, by the way, India's vasectomy rates remain 1% in spite of the fact that there are incentives, there are cash incentives. And are you telling me that vasectomy has improved? What is the percentage of vasectomy in Rajasthan? It continues to be 1%. So men are willing to risk the women go through sterilization force their wives to do it.
Madam Poonam is very much devoid of reality. I can speak of my district only, and I can vouch, you can check the data. The vasectomy rate in PALI district has increased to a substantial extent, one. Number two, incentives are very much available in the governmental setup itself. Whosoever, any female, if she gets sterilized, she gets 650 rupees, and if a male gets sterilized, he gets 1100 rupees.
No, but that is
all right. Well, we'll agree. We'll agree there are incentives.
No.
We'll agree there are incentives. Poonan, I'm going to step in here, Poonan, because I want to know what sort of people are taking part in these procedures. I mean, is there...
No, but please do come back. But, sir, please do come back to this issue of 650. It's not an incentive. It is the price given to a per person because they will miss their wages, daily wages, to come for sterilization.
Poonan, I want to move on, please. I want to move on because I want to know more about the sort of people that are taking part in these procedures.
But when they don't exist, where would they be advised? And they're only being given incentives for sterilization. They're not being given a method mix. They're not being given a choice. They're not being given a right to decide. They're being offered a nano car or a fridge in a lottery for doing only sterilization. Please ask the gentleman from Rajasthan, is he giving incentives?
Well, we've already asked it. We've already asked that, Poonan. I want to go to Simon Ross because that's been proved. They are incentives, and the incentives are very clear. But I wonder, Simon Ross, does this mean this kind of sterilisation, which is primarily aimed at women, does it skew a sexual balance, and is that dangerous in a country?
I think sexual balance is coming from sex selection in the fetus, and that is an issue. It's an issue in China and in India and in other places, and it is concerning for the future. But the way to change that is to change attitudes towards genders, to improve gender equality, and it is illegal. But I don't think we should use that as a reason not to lower the birth rate. I think it's really important for the future to bring family size down to 1 or 2 children, and I think that's what we need to focus on. That's a really important predictor of the future of humanity.
All right, Poonan, Poonam, that would be the way forward, smaller families rather than sterilisation. Would you agree with that kind of policy?
Absolutely,
policy?
but people want smaller families in India. The problem is we do not we don't do counselling, we don't provide a method mix, we don't provide opportunities for people to space their children, to postpone the first child if they wish, and much of India's population is not being fueled by wanted fertility. Wanted fertility is only 20%. 70% of the population is fueled by what we call the population momentum, because half of India's population is at the reproductive health age group. And these are young people who are marrying early, and then there is pressure by the family on producing a child very early, and they have more than the desired number of children that families really want. And if we were to educate our girls and boys, if we were to keep girls in school, if we were to give them opportunities and the method mix, population momentum will be postponed and we'll also have fewer numbers.
NEERAJ,
why don't we deal with the reality?
NEERAJ, pick that up, that point. That's an important point, isn't it?
Madam Poonam, we are giving incentives only to those people who are coming forward to adopt this small family norm. We are not at all negating the utility of spacing methods. We are not at all saying that we are not providing the alternative methods. But as you yourself have told us, that in India we don't have planned pregnancies. We have forced pregnancies, and it's a process, it's a socio-economical process which will take a long time.
NEERAJ,
but up till that, should we wait? Should we wait? All what we are doing is just to give...
I am saying provide...
NEERAJ and Poonam, don't talk at the same time, or I'm going to go to Simon all the time if you talk at the same time, because I can't hear either of you, and neither of you will make a point unless one of you and then the others talk. NEERAJ, you've got 30 seconds to finish your point.
Mr. Stevens, we are providing contraceptives also. We are providing IUD, that is intrauterine device also. We are providing spacing methods like condoms and other things also. But it does not say that we should stop using this sterilization permanent measure of population control. Permanent measure of population control is an accepted thing all over the world. And all what we are doing is just to give something for those families who are themselves adopting the small family norm.
There you are, Poonam. You've had your 30 seconds, NEERAJ. Poonam, come back to me.
Okay, NEERAJ, first of all, it is not true that people are using sterilisation to the extent India is using across the world. 37.3% of the methods used in India in family planning is sterilisation. 1% only is vasectomy, and some 5% is condoms, and 1.1% is copper teas, IUDs, which is IUDs. And the reason we have such low acceptance rates of the other contraceptives is, one is women's agency, the lack of women's agency, but the other is because the quality of our services are rare, they are poor, and we do not do the counselling and the preparation for the women. Why is IUD not being used in India? Because we never tested women for STDs and urinary tract infections, etc. So it became very complicated for those women who did accept the IUD, so they're rejecting it. We have to improve the quality of our services. Nobody's saying stop sterilisation for those people who want.
Right, let's go to Simon Ross, because I want to go global again. In China, as you know, Simon, and we've talked about a one-child campaign is government policy. That policy has very definitely produced a sexual imbalance, far more men than women. It also means the population is ageing very fast, which will bring an abrupt end to its ability, for example, of cheap production, cheap manufacturing, as its dependency ratio rises. Is that true in India as well, or is that peculiarly Chinese problem?
It is a worldwide trend that populations are ageing, partly because the growth rate is slowing in most parts of the world, but partly because we're also living longer, we're healthier. So that is happening. Actually, it's a good thing. It is actually only a temporary thing. At some point, the population will level out again, and we'll get to a more balanced age group. And I think we should remember that as we live longer, we can also work a little bit longer as well. So this problem can be exaggerated. I think sex selection and sexual gender imbalance is more of an issue. And I think we have to work hard in societies where there is really prejudice, where women are seen as less valuable than men, to change the dowry system, to change other reasons why that's the case.
So, Poonam, very briefly, it goes back to cultural problems more than this one individual example in Rajasthan, doesn't it? It goes back to natural problems about a patriarchal society.
We do have a patriarchal society and son preference like China, and so we have to learn from China's experience as fertility declines, whether coercive or non-coercive, in a society where there's son preference and there's myths and misconceptions about the fact that only sons can look after the women, the parents, while there are many daughters and more daughters increasingly looking after the parents. We have to change the perception of society. See, individual behavior cannot change till we change societal perceptions, and India has to work very hard on changing societal norms in terms of the son preference.
So, Neeraj,
and
perhaps you would be better off, Neeraj, trying to change some of those perceptions that Poonam
very true.
has,
That's what I was saying, that it's a social change process, but it will take some time.
Yes, carry on.
Yeah, it will take some time, but from our side, what we are going to, from the district administration side, we are trying to create an atmosphere in which two-child norm should be accepted willingly, by choice, and all those families who are coming forward for this small family norm, we are giving just boost and some kind of help and some kind of incentives to those families who are willingly opting this small family norm.
And how many people, how many women do you think have come forward to be sterilised because of your campaign in Rajasthan?
It's a district level campaign, and as I told you, that Madam Poonam should visit Pali, and after that only she'll be able to understand the fact that we are providing IUD 100%, we are providing contraceptive condoms 100%, but they will be using condom.
Yes, I know. You've mentioned this before. You've said this before, Neeraj,
Yeah.
but what I asked you was how many people came forward to be sterilised?
Last time it was 16,000 families who came forward, and again I'm telling you, it's not the female who decides that she'll be going through this sterilization process. It is the family which decides that she will be going through the sterilization process. So we can't say that the females only came forward. We are saying that family came forward for adopting this small family norm. 16,000 families last year, and this year around 8,000 families, and we are hopeful that some more families will come, because this year we are hopeful that around 20,000 families will come forward to adopt this small family norm.
The big demographic is the Indian birth rate is falling. In fact, it's fallen by more than half in 35 years. Simon Ross, this global problem of global ageing of populations as we live longer because we're healthier and we can work longer, is that a greater problem now than overpopulation?
I don't think so, partly because it's temporary. At some point, the population will level out and will stop ageing. Whereas if we have too many people and we start really changing the climate, or we use up resources like water or energy, or affect food resources, then that's going to be a much bigger problem and something we can't reverse. And we're also concerned about biodiversity as well. So I think population is the big issue, and I think ageing is something that we can manage and work towards, particularly as jobs become less manual, more intellectual. I think people can work later. I don't think that's such a big problem.
And the incredible news is Japan is the country ageing the fastest, and in 40 years' time it will be the oldest society in the world. Thanks to our guests in New Delhi, Poonam Mutreja, in London, Simon Ross, and via Skype from Pali in Rajasthan, NEERAJ PAVAN. And thank you so much for joining us here on this edition of Inside Story. We welcome your comments and suggestions. Please email them to us at insidestory@aljazeera.net. From me, Stephen Cole, goodbye for now.